Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, I had a great question come in on TikTok about what are the best niches for self-publishing. Now, the question is one that a lot of self-published authors ask, and the reason being is that we don't want to waste our time and energy and sometimes money publishing something that isn't going to do well for us in the market. So the first thing we have to define is what you define as a best niche. There's a couple ways to look at it. Does it mean high sales volume? That's a possibility. And let's look at two popular niches in the fiction arena: romance and suspense novels. Now, because those have a lot of sales, does that mean you should go running over to those genres to try and write romance and suspense? Of course not. You have to remember, too, that when there is a niche that has a high sales volume, it's usually dominated by a couple of celebrity level authors. So for example, on romance, it might be Nora Roberts, or suspense would be James Patterson. A lot of those book sales usually are going to those very popular authors and books. It doesn't mean that because there's a lot of sales in that genre that you're going to be able to automatically get a slice of that pie. Another way that people describe a best niche is one that's hot or trending. The problem with this definition of a niche that would be best is that hot categories become not categories, sometimes in a hurry. Let's take 2020, the pandemic year. Some of the niches that were doing well were children's education, religion, and pandemic-related material. So does that mean you should run over there and do a book on one of those topics? Of course not. Simply because that trend could be over and done with in a hurry, especially if there's a major shift in the pandemic. The one thing with self-publishing in these hot or trending topics is that you're more nimble than the big traditional publishers, so you can self-publish something faster than they can, so you can jump on some of those trends. However, it still does take you time to produce and publish a book. And if your knowledge and skills are not in that arena, it will take you a long time to get up to speed, because you don't want to be appearing as an imposter in that arena. A lot of people can write circles around you if that's not your primary topic. Now, here's the best definition for the best niche for you. The best niche for you is one that you are most capable to write in with your skills and knowledge. If you don't have that expert knowledge or expertise for that genre or niche, you'll be called out in a second. And you have to realize too that even though this is the definition of a best niche for you, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a lot of sales, because some of these niche markets that you may have expertise in might be very, very small. I have experience in this small niche arena. My first book, which was Swag, How to Choose and Use Promotional Products for Marketing Your Business, is in an extraordinarily small niche. When I look at the niche for promotional products on Amazon, there's only about 500 titles, and my title is usually at or near the top of that list. But if I look at the broader topics of marketing and promotions, which I could also write for because I do have experience in advertising and sales and that sort of thing, those are crowded territories. Marketing has about 80,000 titles. Promotions has about 50,000 titles. So that's very, very competitive. And even though I could write for them, I just don't have anything special that would make me stand out. And like the high sales niches that we talked about earlier, usually within your broader niche categories, there's going to be some heavy hitter authors who just dominate and get most of the sales. So you really have to understand where you fit and what narrow niche you have. So the question comes, how do you balance writing for a very narrow niche that you're really suited for with wanting more sales appeal in a wider arena? First of all, you should evaluate your niche. Now, how do you do that? Go to Amazon, type in the keyword that best describes the niche that you write for. If there's less than maybe 1,000 titles, it's a really small niche. And even though you may rank high in that niche and make some sales, you're not going to be able to expand much farther than that. If you're in a niche that is competitive, and in my opinion, that is anything over 50,000 titles or more. Some people may evaluate that differently, but for me, it's something that's over 50,000 titles in that niche. It's going to be very competitive. So the trick is to keep doing your research on Amazon to find a keyword or category that is somewhere between the super narrow and the super broad categories that you write for. One other thing that you should check in evaluating your niche on Amazon is the top selling titles. You can compare your book to those books. How do you stand out against those titles? And also look at the publication date for those titles. Some of these niches may have a ton of titles in them. Maybe there was a hot trend and everybody was running to publish in that arena. But if the top, let's say 10 to 100 titles were published years and years ago, your niche is probably not growing and may even be declining. The next thing you need to evaluate in finding a best niche for you is your author platform. We've talked about this in other videos, and your author platform is your fan base. If you don't have an author platform or fan base, you won't make book sales, except random ones that may stumble across you on either social media or Amazon. And the author platform question is one of the biggest reasons why you shouldn't chase hot or trending markets. It takes years to build your author platform. So even if you can publish quickly, you may not have built up enough fans in that topic to make book sales. And then by that time, the trend may be over. This also means if you're chasing these hot and trending markets that you're always in chasing mode. That is unproductive and unprofitable. One of the other ways that I think you can evaluate your niche and your self-publishing opportunities is to follow the publishing industry news. Yes, for the big trade publishers, because self-publishing will generally follow some of those trends as well. My personal favorite for keeping tabs on the publishing industry is Publishers Weekly, and they have a free email newsletter that you can subscribe to that sends you an email with information on what new books are coming out, what trends they're seeing, book sales trends, just a lot of publishing industry information that you should know, because remember, when you self-publish, you're in business and you're a book marketer, so you need to be aware of these things. So I hope you found that helpful, and if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe to The Heidi Thorne Show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, or Podbean. If you like the video version of the podcast better, that's great. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel and turn on the notifications so that you get an alert when a new video is available. Please share the video or the podcast with your author friends on social media. And if you want to see my self-published books, they are on Amazon, Apple Books, and Audible. All you have to do is search for my name, Heidi Thorne, and a listing of all the books that are available on those platforms will show up. If you'd like to connect with me, my website is very simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode, and in the meantime, have a great day.